Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So we're going to present about monohybrid inheritance. So first, the definition of monohybrid cross. Monohybrid inheritance involves inheritance of one characteristic and contrasting traits controlled by a gene. So next we have Mendel experiments. Mendel figured that pea plants possess 7 different characteristics. So pea plants have contrasting traits which are obvious and easy to identify. So he suggested in his theory that characteristic in a parent plant is passed down to its next generation through male gametes and female gametes. This shows that the nuclei of the male and female gametes carry genetic materials of the inherited characteristic. The inheritance factor which determines a characteristic is known as a gene. So in the experiment, Mendel used purebred pea plants as the parental generation to study the inheritance of pea plant traits. Purebred pea plants are produced through self-crossed plants which have similar traits to that of its parent plant in terms of genetic contents. Therefore, self-cross of purebred tall pea plants produce only tall offspring. So in the dominant principle, he explained that in pea plant with a pair of contrasting traits, its trait is determined by a dominant inheritance factor, whereas another contrasting trait is determined by a recessive inheritance factor. So the dominant inheritance factor suppresses the effect of the recessive one. So the recessive trait is not visible, although its inheritance factor exists together with the dominant inheritance factor in a pea plant. So here's are the terms related to inheritance. First, we have gene. So a gene is the basic unit of inheritance which consists of a DNA segment located on a specific locus of a chromosome. So next we got allele. So an allele is an alternative form of a gene for a specific trait that is located on the same locus of a pair of homologous chromosomes. So next we got characteristic and traits. So a characteristic is a heritable feature such as height, eye color, blood group, and presence of dimples. So each characteristic is a feature of an organism. For trait, a trait is a variation of a specific characteristic. Each inherited characteristic consists of a specific trait. For example, height is a characteristic, whereas tall or dwarf is a trait. Next we got phenotype and genotype. For phenotype, phenotype is the observable characteristic of an organism. For example, height. And genotype is the genetic composition of an organism that cannot be seen. For example, genotypes for tall or genotype for dwarf. So let's look at here. So this is a pair of homologous chromosomes. Each gene is located on the same locus of a pair of homologous chromosomes. So assuming that a gene on this locus controls a height characteristic, then this gene is represented by an allele that controls height.
So T will control tall traits, whereas small t control dwarf trait.
So look at this table. Here's the example for characteristic, trait, genotype, and phenotype. Okay, next we got dominant allele and recessive allele. So dominant allele is an allele which always shows its trait when it is present and suppresses the effect of recessive allele.
And it is always represented by a capital letter. We summarize it, which means that dominant allele ni akan selalu nampakkan diri dia, and bila dia duduk sekali dengan recessive allele, dia macam akan tindih recessive allele tu untuk nampakkan dia seorang je.
So next we got recessive allele. So recessive allele is an allele which shows its trait when both alleles are recessive allele. So the effect of recessive allele is suppressed by the presence of dominant allele. So for recessive, it is represented by a small letter.
So dia macam recessive allele ni, dia bila dua-dua recessive allele baru dia akan munculkan dia punya sifat. For the next one, we have homozygotes. Homozygotes is when both alleles at low T of a pair of homologous chromosomes are the same. For example, capital letter B and capital letter B, or small letter b and small letter b. But for heterozygotes, alleles at low T of a pair of homologous chromosomes are different. So for example, we have capital letter B and small letter b. For the next one, we have a parental generation. Parental generation refers to the first generation of two individuals which are mated to predict or analyze genotypes of their offsprings. Like the first generation, like tuan yang macam tu lah. Okay, for the next one we have filial generations, which refers to a successive generations as a result of mating between individual of pure breed parental generation. Macam dikira sebagai produk daripada parental generation that are pure breed. Next one, we have dominant traits. Dominant traits is expressed when both alleles are dominant alleles, or one dominant allele is paired with a recessive allele. Okay, for the second one, we have recessive traits. It is expressed if a recessive allele is paired with another recessive allele. I think this is the last one for the terms. Okay, we have pure breed. Pure breed, it refers to individual which carries two identical for a trait. So if we want to remember it, just remember individual that have two identical alleles for a trait. Okay, for the last one, we have hybrid. Hybrid is a product of mating between two pure breed varieties. It is the product. So for the next one, you will see a picture. It's just like a memory tip. So we have a purple flower and a white flower. For the purple one, it has both alleles which are dominant and is represented by two capital letter B. Therefore, the dominant trait for flower color characteristic, which is purple, is expressed. Both alleles are the same. Therefore, the genotype is called homozygous dominant. Okay, why it is called homozygous dominant? Because homozygous, because it is the same. As you can see, it has the allele of capital letter B and capital letter B. So if capital letter, then it will always be dominant. Okay, for the white flower, both alleles are recessive, so it is represented by small letter B and small letter b. Therefore, the recessive trait for flower color characteristic, which is white, is expressed. Both alleles are the same, therefore the genotype is called homozygous recessive. When both are recessive allele, so they can express the traits. Okay, so if we look down the product, hybrid produced from mating of two pure breed plants, and this generation is called the first filial generation. It consists of both dominant allele and recessive allele. This is represented by capital letter B and small letter b. Therefore, the dominant trait for flower color, purple, is expressed as its phenotype. Recessive trait is not observed because it is suppressed by the dominant trait. Though both alleles are different, therefore the genotype is called heterozygote. The next slide is about cross of parental generation. It's like a table without no line, like that. So we just for the parental phenotype, it's purple and white. For parental genotype, it's both capital letter B and both are small letter B. And meiosis happen, and the gametes are capital letter B and small letter b. So its first generations of genotype will be capital letter B and small letter b. So it's for the first phenotype, all purple flowers. But if the first generations is have cross, so we have purple and purple. So when fertilization happens, the product of the genotype will have a variety of them, such as about 25% will be capital letter, both are capital letter B, and which is the color is going to be purple. And we also have 50% of the capital letter P and combined with small letter b, and it is also purple color. And there is also 25% of it will become white, which is small letter b and small letter b. Therefore, the ratio of the second phenotype are 3 purple and 1 white. Punnett square can also be used to predict the ratio and probabilities of genotype and phenotype in the offsprings produced. So you can also use this Punnett square to know the product of the parental generation. As you can see on the picture shown, purple flower is combined with white flower will also produce purple flower, because the purple flower have a dominant allele. So dominant will always shows its traits. And there is a Punnett square, as you can see. It gives the product of the second filial generation. Yes, that is the product. I think that's all. Thank you for sparing your ears to us. That's all.